Welcome back to the channel. I hope you all are well. I wanted to do this video today about it's in reference to some of Cynthia G's videos, the lead attorney's videos, but it's actually involving a case most of us well know of where there's basically domestic violence and this murder suicide that takes place. So the video is not, this isn't anything directly that is focused on the lead attorney or Cynthia G, outside of the overall topic, and basically our viewpoints on them, right? So the education entertainment television show, it's not so much about um, you know what I mean, finding someone to blame. It's all about solutions, and it's about trying to help people to get tools that they need in order to deal with the socioeconomic landscapes they may be navigating, right? And so we talk about ways to get value, to how our relationships may impact those things. So we kind of combine a lot of things, on our channel to be some helpful information to people. Uh, Education, how we defined it, it's when a person has the tools to navigate their environment. And of course, when we're talking about education, it can uh, encompass a wide area of things, right? So we're not just talking about academics, right? um, but this is one of these situations that uh, is in our world right now that I think we have to really pay attention to and deal with it um, in the proper way. And sometimes when people don't have tools that are necessary to do this, uh, they can make fatal mistakes, right? Mistakes that can't be corrected, that are a problem. And of course, by this, I think many of you all are well aware of the topic I'm talking about. Where recently a black man, murdered both his ex-wife and his current pregnant girlfriend, right? And the information we have at this time is it may have been related to a custody battle that went on for years with his children. Now, what's happened across social media and YouTube and many areas is, of course, it's become the situation that who's responsible for this and who should be held accountable for this. And I think it's clear under the law and basically, and just in the minds of most of society that when you commit a crime, you're responsible for that crime, right? You are uh, accountable for that crime, right? You're liable for that crime. And there's no getting around that. There's no negotiating out of that. There's no, well, the devil made me do it, so to speak, right? You're responsible for the decisions you make, and with those decisions, consequences come that impact not just your life, but in some cases, the lives of so many other people. And this is one of those cases where so many lives have been impacted from this, from children who don't have parents anymore to the loved ones of people who are affected by this. Um, so instead of playing the blame, and focusing on, who did what needs to happen, instead, we're going to focus on identifying some of the problems and, from an education standpoint, what we can do to make sure something like this never happens to us, that we get the help that is needed. So I want to focus on that area of the conversation, right? Uh, Everybody's I feel have made very valid points on either side. Uh, the conclusion of the matter is when you commit a crime, you're responsible for that crime. You're responsible for the carnage, that you create. There is a such thing of being responsible of something, even if you're not, or being responsible for something, even if you're not at fault, right? There is a such thing. I'll give you an example of what I mean, just to kind of fully cover this topic. Let's say you have a child who breaks out the neighbor's window, right? It is true that you did not break out the window, but oftentimes you're going to be held responsible because it's your child, because they're a minor. And so although you didn't directly do the crime or create the incident or the vandalism or whatever it is, you still may be held accountable for it, right? Happens in married couples. If you're sued by someone, right, at the fault of your spouse, if they went up and ran up a tremendous amount of debt, you are still liable and sued along with your spouse, right? So we're clear on all of these things, right? We're clear on this point. Um, Now let's talk about uh, relationships just for a moment here, and problems that happen in many relationships. And when we think about somebody like Cynthia G, who um, talks a lot about divesting from the black community, right? Or black women should just be done with black men. Um, I believe personally it is a misunderstanding in our relationships, right? There's a great misunderstanding in relationships, not just in black people, right? Not just isn't just a black issue, but there is a problem in our relationships, period, right? And it goes across the spectrum. Now, of course, we can pull up the stats that some relationships in certain communities, based on their traditions and customs and culture, may push forward different statistics. But what is clear, many incidents occur in every culture, in every group, and in every race that are very similar, right? Similar to even this incident that recently took place. Let's address relationships for a moment, though, right? Let's take a look at what I believe to be a misunderstanding in relationships. And so, about a decade ago, I went on a spiritual retreat. And it was important. I was at a time in my life where I had spent a lot of time focusing on work and business. It was important that for me, and quite healthy for me, to basically have a more well-rounded, fully ranged uh, view of self, understanding what I wanted, who I was, and my place in the environment around me, right? And I recommend everybody do something like that, right? I think it's very important. It's very healthy. Um, Here's what I learned about, and I learned many things, right? I learned many things about myself, and I got to spend quite a bit of time with myself. But here's the important thing I learned about relationships, right? So there's a story about a person, or imagine you have a friend and you're involved in a romantic relationship. That friend is able to, one day she spots what appears to be your significant other. And your significant other is basically kissing on another person, right? Another woman, another man. And so your friend comes back and they tell you that, well, I hate to tell you this, but I caught your boyfriend, your husband, cheating on you. They were kissing another person, right? And I just felt as a friend I needed, I need to tell you what was going on, right? Um, and so the thought process is that of betrayal of the person, great concern. What happened? I can't believe they did this to me. Uh, and in that very moment, that person is taken out of that those feelings that they have of love of the person, right? That they're involved with. Here's what I learned, right? If love in those type situations, if love was something tangible, you could hold in your hand, right? I'm kind of getting ahead of the story though. It's another important part to that. But um, so in that example, you felt all these emotions and feelings that I would say were the opposite of love, that it wasn't love, that nothing in that moment identified as love. But and so later that day, you confront your significant other and you let them, how can you do this to me? What happened? Was that you? And say such such. And then they tell you, oh no, I was someplace else. And I got, such such could tell you I was with them. And that wasn't me. And it couldn't have been me because I was at blah, 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 blah at a certain point of time. It is proven that it wasn't the person, right? That you thought was cheating on them, right? So all of a sudden, now all of those feelings of love and admiration, they come back to you because you find out you're wrong in that instance, right? Um, what I found out in an example like that is if love was something tangible that you could hold, right? You wouldn't have to you wouldn't have to believe or trust, right? In another person to tell you, to prove to you these things. And you would never have feelings like the one we just described of of betrayal of what a person could possibly do to you, right? You would never live in such a fear because the love would not allow you to live in such a way, right? And so that means that we have to constantly be told by people that they love us, and we have to constantly be in this uncertainty phase of people don't love us because it isn't something that we can readily verify and believe in that sense, right? What I learned is that love is something that is given out to people in a sense, for lack of a better explanation. It's not something that, it's not the substance that moves and is reciprocal in the way you think it should be, right? It is something that is always present, always there, and it doesn't leave you and go back and forth based on news or anything. It is unconditional in its essence, right? The reason this is all very important, I think, is because if you don't understand a concept like that, it can quickly push you into the ideas of whatever happens outside of you with another person, even in an example like Cynthia G, where people will choose a certain person and they will expect of their race, whether it's a black man or something like that, they expect a certain expectation from them. And when they don't get it, right, it's something either wrong with that person or something wrong with you. But let me give you a third option, the option of maybe it's nothing wrong with yourself or the other person, right? Are you following what I'm saying? Perhaps what it is a misunderstanding of not only what love is, but a misunderstanding of our places in relationships, right? Now, this is all very important, folks, in understanding this concept, because if you don't, then issues like what happened with this man earlier this week can happen, where people, I believe, put people in the wrong roles in their relationships and what they can do, right? What they could do for them, what they ought to do, and what they expect of them to do, right? And to me, that is a very misunderstood way to look at a relationship, right? Whenever a person feels unloved, right, betrayed in that sense because their love was so much dependent and the validation of that love was so much dependent on another person, then their self-worth goes down. Now, what's the problem with that? The problem is when their self-worth goes down, then their self-worth for other people goes down, right? And the environment they're in becomes very alien, right? Love is something that we simply are and that we give, right? The misunderstanding of our relationships is that someone owes you something or that they should give you something or that they are expected to act in a certain way. They're not they don't have to do any of those things. And you have no control or power over them to make them do those things, right? Any pact or agreement that you make can be broken, much like contracts can be broken, right? But in, I believe, a proper understanding of love, in which you understand it is something that you are, and it is something that you give freely, that it is not conditional. It's not a job application, right? It's not a, you got to do this or I'm leaving type thing. It is unconditional, right? And I think when we understand relationships that way, that this isn't something that you have to do, and when you don't do it, we're going to punish you for it, that we're going to do all these things, uh, uh, then things become a lot more clearer. Uh, Relationships get a lot easier, and there is a lot more love and understanding involved. And the reason I'm saying all this because this works both ways, right? This goes across the spectrum, you know, in every area. Um, how you treat people, what you expect from people, what you expect people to do. If you're in a relationship with someone and that person wants to leave you, they no longer want to be in that relationship. Those people don't really owe you anything as far as feelings are concerned. They don't owe feelings to you. Feelings can be bankrupted from you at any time. And you should be able to navigate your environment, understand that, and live with that. And understand that any love you gave to that person was given freely. And that it's out there to give. Give it, right? Give it. It's free. Give it free if you feel that you want to give it. But don't expect others to owe you something or be beholden to you, or have to be forced to stay with you. And in the times that they don't want to stay, then you act as judge, jury, and executioner over their lives. That is wrong, and it is a misunderstanding, right? If love was something that was tangible, you could hold in your hand, you would not have to be told every day by people that they love you, right? You wouldn't need any of that. But because you don't know, because we don't know the minds and the hearts of other people, we could never know because we don't have the empathetic, uh, we're not empathic. We don't have that capability. We may be have sympathy for people, but at the end of the day, you really don't know how another person feels about you or how they choose to act out, right? The same people who told you that one day, that told you that they love you, they may be the people the next day that murder you or kill you. We just don't know that. That's just the fact of the matter. That's just the truth, right? That's just it's a I think it's a hard truth we need to learn to accept. That doesn't mean alienate yourself from the world. It doesn't mean don't give love, but it means that the love you give and the love you feel is the love that comes out of you, not from someone else. And that's what I learned. And I thought that was very important. I know a lot of people think I'm rambling on, but I think a lot of people need to hear that and understand that, because it does impact a lot of actions we take in the relationships. How we get to points like where Cynthia G, wants to just blame one race of people for all the relationship problems that probably exist in the world. How we get to people murdering their spouses and going through custody battles and divorces and not knowing how to deal with and handle it. Um, that's the education and the tool today that we need to use, right? That we need to understand. That love of self and the love that comes out of you is the love that you feel, right? That is what you're feeling. That is what's making you happy. It's not coming out of your relationships, your sensations, your emotions, right? It might take some people some time to get to that point. But it does solve a lot of relationship problems when you make it to that point. Let's move on from that to the mischaracterization of domestic violence, right? Particularly in black men. So I did a video earlier where I was talking about the Pookie and the Ray Rays, right? The term that we use. I don't even like that term. I just kind of use it for reference. I don't know what's a better term. I think I had a better term I wanted to use, right? But I was saying in my earlier videos that the Pookie and the Ray Rays were at one time the heroes of the black community, right? And I know people say, "What are you talking about? That sounds crazy, right?" And I don't mean in a bad way. I mean in a good way. The Pookie and the Raiders used to be the heroes in a good way. And let me explain what I mean. The Pookie and the Raiders, remember, if you go back to the 60s, the 70s, where you had, uh, before equal rights, and you had, police's killing black people, you know what I mean? The Ku Klux Klan mixed up with the, uh, with the municipalities of the time. You hear of events like the Mississippi burning and all those things, right? Um, there was a time where there was a certain type of mindset that was probably needed to protect the black community, right? And not join the establishment is some, you know what I mean? Because back then, if you kind of think about it, if you were a person in a affluent position, right, or a good position, a prominent position, they would probably call you a Sambo or Uncle Tom or something like that, and you'd probably be treated like one, right? And so a lot of times the idea was, people in the black communities, they didn't really want to join the establishment. In some cases, they had to protect their communities from the police, right, from the cricket cops and so on and so forth, right? And it was a harsh environment, right, in the inner cities and things like that, right? So there was a certain type of person that existed in that environment, right, that could be helpful in certain situations, right? And so those type of people would have been seen as the providers and people who protected the communities, right? And but didn't necessarily go to a job, you know, uh, took care of their family, but it was done as a community effort, right? And all of these things, right? And so in our DNA, there was a support for those type of people in the black community. Now, what I say happened in modern times is those type of people, right? They didn't evolve, with the surroundings. So some of them kind of stay in that, back in a certain mindset that is not, the best. They're not in the best state in the today's environment, right? Because in today's environment, right, you do need to be part of establishment. You do need to, kind of, do certain things to make a living. The community is, more separated now. It's not more cohesive under segregation, right? Now it's everybody is kind of out there, every man kind of for himself, right? And so some of the things that worked didn't, that worked then don't work now. Now the problem though is in our DNA, many of us still look to those people as our heroes and the type of people we want, right? Or these are men that might be desirable to women. Now the the thing to understand in this though, and it's a reason behind why I made that comment and said that the Pookie and the Ray Rays were like the heroes of yesterday, is because there's another false narrative that kind of went around that that gets pushed out there that isn't true, and Cynthia G pointed it out, and that is that uh, this is certain violent behavior, certain irresponsible behavior, only occurs in the Pookie and the Ray Ray types. Like they had a big story not long ago that talked about um, this Pookie and Ray Ray type person who killed a up and coming attorney out of the Atlanta area, right? And they were like from different worlds, right? And so he ends up killing her. And he fit that bill. And so they pushed that story out there. Um, but what gets left out is that there are so many stories where people who are doctors and lawyers uh, kill their spouses, right? And these people aren't Pookie or Ray Rays. That is true. And in some cases, I mean, I've heard many stories like this because if it's involving assets or real estate or something to that level, that may even make them even more motivated to act in those ways, right? So this isn't something that just occurs with Pookies and Ray Rays, right? Now, because it was a custody case, getting on to what lead attorney was saying, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time with this. Again, the purpose of this video isn't to, it is, it's about being accountable and being responsible, right, as well. But being educated and having the tools so you don't end up in situations like this, right? Because it's not just about the, uh, um, in the case of what happened here, where someone went off the rails and they go and kill these people, right? It's also about, is there anything the partners of these people can do, right? Because we have to remember, uh, in many cases, people show early signs of tendencies to violence, mental health issues, and so on and so forth. Whatever the case may be, there are warning signs. And as I understand, in this case, there were some, right? And there were court documents and things of that nature. Warning signs to, uh, you know what I mean, to what we can look out for from that, from that viewpoint. Now, there is a limit to what a person can do. Like in this particular case, the guy goes all the way, several states over to get to this woman to kill her, right? And there's only so much you could do to defend yourself. I mean, anybody could be killed. But the purpose of this is to try to put you in the best position you can be in. You know, protect yourself as much as possible. It might be necessary to learn how to shoot a gun, right? For some women, it might be necessary to go on a gun range, right? If you were getting warning signs like that from a person, um, and you're letting the police know you're filing all the legal documents you can, and they don't seem to be doing much, there might be unnecessary to defend yourself from these people, right? Uh, if you're a person who has mental health issues, if you feel you've been betrayed in love and you feel hopeless or helpless, and you feel like you have no other way out, watch the beginning of this video. Think about information I received at this spiritual retreat I went to. That's why it took so long to explain it, so you understand how love works, where it comes from, right? That you shouldn't feel hopeless when it's not given to you by a person of your choosing, in particular, that you want to give it to you, right? Um, the lead attorney talks about custody cases. I'm sure he has a lot of valid custody cases in these matters. I listened to some of what he had to say, and you know, he's an attorney, and I think he gave a lot of information that was you know, from his knowledge and education on that. I think a lot of that did make sense, right? But however you look at the case, the responsibility falls on the individual. You could be responsible for something, even if you're not at fault, right? Whether it's due to mental illness, whether it's due to somebody else did something and you were negligent in that, whatever the case may be, right? Our job is to take education and navigate our environment so that we come out with the best result, right? It's not about being right. I rather be alive, right? You know, um, so these are some things we have to, you know, keep in mind, that there are going to always be people like this in our world, where they're sick or whether they have some false sense of entitlement about what should come to them, who should love them, and who should do what, right? We're going to always have that. But it's about what you can do in these cases as well, right? So this was a tragedy. There are going to be many, many more cases like this. There already have been. This was a very chilling one because I think of just how it was done, how we got to see this person tell this story before it occurred. You know what I mean? And if you're still not clear on what I'm talking about, I'm sure you probably heard it'll come to you. And this is just a tough situation. It's just a bad situation all around. There isn't a whole lot of, if any, silver line that can come out of this, right? The only thing I can think of is just that we, on all sides, do all we can to protect ourselves, to protect ourselves from other people. Take care of your mental health, right? If that's a problem, uh, understand the place of work and money, your work life and relationships. And I say that because, some people just go totally crazy, over material things, money, right? Some people are willing, some spousal relationships, the people are willing to kill you because you're going to receive money from a divorce settlement or child custody or whatever the case may be, right? Let's put all these things in perspective, right? That those are just things, right? And that your sense of any kind of betrayal, and again, what people ought to do, are emotions and feelings that you've told a story to yourself that should occur. But that's not how the world works, right? The divorce rate is over 50%, and by your second relationship, it's as high as 70, something like 74%, right? So whatever ideas exist about how relationships should go, get rid of them, right? You know, sure it's great in a Disney World Hollywood idea, but that's not how life works, right? But that's all I want to say in this video, guys. Guys, take care of yourselves. Take care of each other. If you like content like this, don't forget to like, subscribe. And until next time, as always, take care.